What nuts? It is Pacific Division Preview Day on What Chaos, presented by Prize Picks. Download the Prize Picks app today and use code What Chaos and get $50 instantly when you play $5. Prize Picks, run your game. I am DJ Beans. Sitting right next to me is Pete Blackburn, and over there is a boy named Sean DePaz. Hello, boys.
Hello. The upset of all upsets today is that you did not wear any Oilers gear for this.
I don't know if you noticed this. A little bit. Actually, I don't know if this is true. I was going to say I didn't wear any team gear during the previews to show that I'm not biased. However, I probably wore Blue Jacket stuff for the Metro preview because I wear a lot of Blue Jacket stuff.
Yeah, and I just going to not wear that Stinger shirt?
Oh, such a good shirt. I might have just been doing that anyway, though. But you've been good about making sure you coordinate. And look at you. You even tied in our friend's addition there, which really... Sean, he's wearing, it's maybe, is he clashing divisionally? Because that's more of an Atlantic hat and a Pacific.
No,
Dishon's league-wide.
Dishon has a collaboration with the Blackhawks.
The Blackhawks famously.
They're league-wide boys.
I'd agree.
But they're also AFC East. They do a lot of stuff
That
with
is true.
the
They
Buffalo
are
Bills.
Definitely AFC East.
I was torn this morning between this beautiful Kings sweatshirt, came courtesy of the LA Kings, our friends, we love them, and the Fanatics Anaheim Ducks shirt that I got, and I was like, I picked the Ducks thing, but then I expected you to wear Oilers, so I wanted to do like a little, I see your thing, and a little counter.
Fun fact, he is wearing a very Buffalo outfit because both Dishon and New Era are Buffalo-based companies.
That is true.
And fun fact, you're wearing that sweatshirt. Had you worn the Fanatics Ducks t-shirt, you would have been wearing a thicker item of clothing.
Yeah, 100%.
Because, as we'll show you one day, the Fanatics Made in Canada line is a real, like, we make durable stuff, okay?
Yeah.
Check it out.
Yeah, we were
bulletproof.
We were having the conversation right before the show started. I think the Pacific Division is the best looking division in all of hockey now. And that's kind of wild for me to say because I think the Ducks were one of my least favorite jerseys a year ago. I was really sick of the Kings jerseys. I thought that the Sharks jerseys like a couple years ago were
careful now,
not great.
Yeah,
and we're like progressively getting worse. Those old Sharks jerseys. In the last few years, this division has had a complete turnaround fashion-wise.
Goes without saying, Oilers jerseys, absolutely gorgeous. You're right. The Kings got it into gear. The Sharks absolutely got it into gear. I really like Knights jerseys. That's more of like a you got to see it to believe it kind of thing. Go through their pro shop. Go back there. Like the sparkle, it's not corny. It's cool.
Yeah.
It's unique. Flames have a beautiful sweat.
Classic.
Like, the less black they incorporate into their look, I think the better. And they're going with the kind of more clean, palatable look in the Kraken.
Kraken's underrated.
And now, the Ducks jerseys, Sean, we disagree on this, but the Ducks jerseys are, maybe it's like recency bias, but like I'm thinking like top 7 in the league. Top 5-ish.
I want to wait
That's
to
absurd.
see them on the ice. I don't love the white, like full kit. I think it's kind of wild. I really do like the all orange though. As far as the division though, like not a bad jersey, I think, in the entire division, and there's a ton of variety. A ton of variety.
This is also just maybe the most fun and exciting division in the NHL. Sent 4 teams to the playoffs last year, which I guess every division did last season, but has the betting Stanley Cup favorite, has 2 extremely fun young teams that, maybe one of those end up taking a step forward. You have teams that are maybe trying to recalibrate on the fly, like the Knights and the Kings. and also the Flames and the Kraken are there. So it's very exciting stuff in this division. I love this. This is definitely my favorite division. Your favorite division? This or Atlantic?
Mine's probably Atlantic. I think that this one it leans a little top heavy. Not maybe not as much as like the Central, but like when you're getting down to the Flames, not to shoot our wad at all, but like Flames, Sharks, Ducks, Kraken, there's intrigue
but
there.
There's so many exciting elements of those teams. I didn't even mention the Canucks, but we're going to mention all these teams because we'll run through them, beginning with the Anaheim Ducks, who enter their second season with Greg Cronin as head coach. Last season, if you remember, they started strong. We had Frank Vetrano on the show, and we're like, you guys are going to make the playoffs. And they finished 7th in the division. But you see Frank Vetrano there coming off a 37-goal season. And the story with this team will be implementing more young players, most notably Cutter Gauthier, who is coming off a fun career at Boston College, a lot of drama with the Philadelphia Flyers, forcing his way out of there, and now he's with Anaheim. Now we finally get to see him in the NHL. Other young guys, Leo Carlson, Mason McTavish taking steps forward. Here's my goal for the Anaheim Ducks, is that they can't trade. They find themselves in a situation where they cannot trade 30-year-old unrestricted free agent to be Frank Vetrano, because they're like, this situation right now is too good.
So you want Frank Vetrano in Anaheim for the long haul? Like, you wouldn't want to see him on a contender?
Well, there's specifically a contender that I don't want to see him on, and I'm not going to name New York Rangers.
I was going
names,
to. Yeah.
But I want what's best.
That's heartbreaking because I think that's the team that he would want to go to the most. Like, based off of the vibes that we got from Frank.
Based on his favorite jersey, at least.
His favorite jersey
he
ever.
Reflects very fondly on his time with the Rangers. And he was great with the Rangers, and I think they could use a player
they
like
could
him.
absolutely use him, although who knows, maybe Riley Smith cucked him just a little bit, but they can use more than just Riley Smith. But my goal for this team is, it's not obvious throughout the season that Vetrano gets dealt the deadline. I want them to be in the mix-ish, surprising people. I don't know how realistic that is because so much of this season is going to be young guys taking steps forward. But what do you feel, or how do you feel about the Anaheim Ducks?
Yeah, that's basically it. Like, I think they're very raw and they're extremely young, but very interesting. And I think this is a big year, a big finding out year for guys like Trevor Zegras. Like, is he going to stick around in Anaheim? I think that he's the guy that really needs to take that big step. Because, like, I mean, I don't want to put words in your mouth. I don't think we're the biggest Trevor Zegras podcast, but there's something there, obviously. He's
we could
a talented
be one
player. Yeah. I just think that he needs to round out his game a little bit more, be a little bit more consistent, and be like a leader on that team. And haven't seen a lot of leadership from this seat right here.
Trevor Zegras, 15 points in 31 games last season.
Not good.
So
not good enough.
Hurt.
Yeah.
Unproductive, obviously frustrated at points, and why wouldn't you be if you've got that kind of talent and it's not necessarily translating to results? You said no leadership out of Trevor Zegras, or haven't seen it so far. The Ducks have figured out their leadership structure, and it's going to start with Radko Gudas. How do you feel about Radko Gudas wearing a C in the NHL and in Anaheim?
I mean, it's weird. It's definitely weird.
Surprising.
It's surprising. It's weird. I would have maybe looked at a Troy Terry to wear that C. The guy that's been there like maybe the longest. Or no, Cam Fowler's there. Sorry. Well, I wouldn't give it to Cam Fowler because he doesn't want to fucking be there anymore. That's one thing that I'll say. I want the Ducks to trade Cam Fowler and maybe also John Gibson. It seems like neither one of those guys wants to be there. And I think they need adults in the room that want to be there. And Radko Gudas was signed to be an adult in the room, to be a leader in that group. And it seems like he's done a good job kind of being that guy. And he's been a good player over the past few years. So why not give him the C? So it's weird to me, like, based on what Radko Gudas was 5 years ago, but based on the Ducks situation, I think it makes sense.
There are going to be, we talked about in the Central Division, there's going to be so many teams in the West that are like, just get us to the deadline. We'll grab ourselves a right shot defenseman, and there. Once we plug that, Cam Fowler has 2 years left on his deal. He has one more year after this at $6.5 million. If you are the Stars, if you are the Canucks, if you are the Oilers, that's a tree you'd want to bark up. Guy could play a bajillion minutes. I remember when we started this show, I wanted to do a thing on surprising lifers. Like players that you're like, hey, did you know that this guy is still on this team? And Cam Fowler is a top 4 defenseman. He's a top pairing defenseman for the Ducks, but just so surprising that nothing ever ended up kind of shaking out there. And especially for all the change the Ducks have experienced over the years,
And,
even
like,
specifically
the
on
defense.
defense.
Yeah.
The guys that they've moved out, and just Cam Fowler has stayed there since, I believe, being drafted in 2010. He was part of that Taylor Hall, Tyler Seguin, Jeff Skinner draft.
I also think that he made himself pretty difficult to deal, which is probably one of the reasons why they didn't trade him and he hasn't been traded. It seems like that's flipped a little bit over the past year or so. But yeah, I'd like to see them kind of move on from those guys and get something for him, especially because I think Lucas Dostal is ready to go. I've been impressed with what I've seen from him over the past year or so. I think he's ready to be the guy, and John Gibson hasn't been that good and like the dude that he once was for a while now. So I'd move on.
And if you are the Ducks and you're thinking about at some point, does this Cam Fowler thing ever end? You moved on from Jamie Drysdale last year, so you'd say, oh, well, your young defensive group has taken a hit. They have so many young guys on defense anyway, though. This is the first full year of Olin Zellweger. Jackson Lacombe. You have a lot of young players
Pavel Mintyukov.
on defense anyway, so that's something I'd entertain. Mainly with the Frank thing, I just want everybody to be happy, and I want Frank Vatrano to score a bajillion goals. Again, I mentioned Cutter Gauthier, who I believe has the 6th best odds to win Rookie of the Year. 5th best odds. Very sorry to Cutter Gauthier. He's not the player that I think has the most obvious breakout season ahead of him, and that's Mason McTavish, who enters his 3rd full season, has not scored 20 goals yet in the NHL, but it feels like he has arrived. Mm-hmm. He's definitely arrived, but he hasn't broken out.
Yeah, there was a point last year where we were like, oh, this guy is like
about to explode.
He is going to be like their like central core guy, I think. Like he might be their most well-rounded player.
I love him and Troy Terry on the line.
Yes.
Love both of those players a ton. So he's obvious to break out. And then the other one, how many games do they let Leo Carlsson play this season? Because they took him 2nd overall in 2023 and famously really wanted to load manage him. And I guess why not? That team did not, despite its start, have major designs on making a playoff run. If you want to take a step forward this year, obvious areas are your first-line center in Mason McTavish breaking out, and probably your second-line center in Leo Carlsson arriving. And I'd say that he's still not yet at the point where he's arrived.
No, because they have to let the chains off a little bit. Like you got to let them play. Yeah, I mean their top 6 could be very good in terms of what it will be at some point. Again, they're really raw. They're too young, I think, to really make a ton of noise this year. But I'm excited. I'm really, really excited for Cutter Gauthier. One, because hell of a player, but also, like, he's a bit of a shit.
Not afraid to be a heel.
Not afraid to be a heel. Not afraid to just fucking let her rip, whether it's, trade requests, whether it's just shit that he says. I'm excited for that personality. Not that I think that the Ducks need that kind of guy, but I'm always going to take that kind of guy.
There are some well-rounded teams in the NHL. Last season, the Anaheim Ducks were poorly rounded. They were both 30th. They were 30th in both goals for and goals against. I asked you this with the Ducks, or I'm sorry, with the Blackhawks. What is more likely to drastically improve between those two?
The goal scoring.
Just like Chicago, like the young guys will be older. If McTavish scores more, if Zegras is healthy for a full year, I mean, hell, right now, if you look at Daily Faceoff, or at least when I made my little cheat sheet study guide thing, they have Trevor Zegras, first line left wing, Frank Vatrano bumped down to the 3rd line. Like if they are at a point where Frank Vatrano looks like Frank Vatrano from last year, and he's more of just a middle six player, then, oh my God, I'm not saying playoff run. I hope playoff run, but they could be a young team that just scores a bajillion goals, and that would rock, and allows a bajillion goals.
Right. That's the point that I was going to make too. Like they might become one of my favorite types of teams in the league. It's a young team that scores a bunch, lets up a bunch, extremely high event, entertaining hockey. Like they could be the Buffalo Sabres from like a few years ago. I think they're going to be fun this year, and that's probably the best that you can ask for as a Ducks fan. But like, they might rock.
Peter,
and derogatory.
I'm sorry, Sean. Did you? Have
I was going to say for those invested in the Cutter Gauthier Philadelphia Flyers revenge tour, we have to wait all the way until December 28th for them to play the Flyers for the first time, and January 11th for them to go to Philadelphia for the first time.
Yeah, that's a bit of a bummer that they don't. That's a fuck up on the schedule maker's part that the Philly thing doesn't happen earlier in the season.
And it's a 4 p.m.
first.
Oh, it's 4 p.m. Pacific. Never mind.
Okay.
So 7 p.m. on a Saturday though. So prime time viewing for.
Hopefully, I mean, Cutter will have gotten off to a start by then, though. So he'll have like 11 goals already.
I did hear, by the way, got a little inside information that the Ducks are about to do some game presentation shit this year that is going to rock your dick off.
Does it involve the Offspring?
I don't think so, because
Can't rule it out.
Because no, you can rule it out, because the little tidbit of information that I got was that they might be the first team in the NHL to do this certain thing. So, like, it might be a groundbreaking type of thing that the Ducks are doing. Which, if that was the case, they did it last year.
Well, if it's like regular Offspring, like every night is Offspring nights. One of the great things about Gene Principe's famous pizza open was, I think that was on Offspring night, I believe, and you could see like Offspring stuff lighting up around him in the background as he's dressed like a pizza boy. What an absolute legend. There's your Ducks preview. Pete, I now task you with making me interested in the Calgary Flames. And I don't mean to do that as like an immediate shot at the Flames, but this is one of the teams that will be more challenged to have a strong, exciting season, I think.
Yeah, I mean, my primary note on the Calgary Flames here is this might be the most, quote, what is going on here team in the league. Like, what is the direction of this team and what's the plan? Because they've lost so much over the past few years, and like they have some young guys, but not enough to be like, okay, just wait a few years and they'll be okay.
They also seem like they're at a point where the best they can do is, and I don't want to use these previews to shit on anybody, even if we kind of did ignore a team in the Central preview, but
we didn't shit on them.
That's right. We don't shit on teams. They just kind of shuffle deck chairs, like Andrew Mangiapane out so they can sign Anthony Mantha, and it's like, sweet.
Yeah.
I don't know how much that changes your team, really.
So what I'll say about this team, at least like the forward lineup, their forward lineup is basically exclusively comprised of like middle six players, which is not a recipe for success most of the time. Like, you have to have your tiers of talent.
What about Jonathan Huberdeau? Third year with the team. It has gone extremely poorly, and the salt on the wound is that a trade that looked maybe a little imbalanced in the favor of the Flames has proven to be one of the most multiple franchise changing trades we've seen in a very, very long time.
Yeah, I mean, I'd love to say that maybe he turns a corner. I don't think you've seen it. Like, you haven't seen enough evidence. He has just looked like a complete shell of himself. And again, like, I would love for him to figure it out, because I think that guy's been having a hell of a time over the past few years, not only based off his own performance, but also having to watch Florida go on to win the Stanley Cup last year. The quotes that came out after they won were pretty depressing from his end, where it's like, yeah, of course, this fucking blows. So I'm rooting for him. I don't know if I've seen enough to believe in it.
He's entering the second year of an 8-year deal with a $10.5 million cap hit. And last season, he had 12 goals and 40 assists for 52 points in 81 games, which is his lowest point total since he was injured in the 2016 and 2017 season. Really rough stuff.
Yeah.
Like, he is, I'm not trying to be dramatic, like, he is kind of cratered there, and the vibes haven't looked amazing. As you mentioned, the quotes after seeing Florida win, it's a bummer there. And I root for Jonathan Huberdeau because I don't want anything to truly suck unless it sucks in a funny and endearing way.
Yeah.
And this has been an absolute bummer for both him, the Calgary Flames. Haven't even mentioned what their fans have been through, because while the roster looks nothing like what it did when Johnny Gaudreau was last there in 2021-22, I want to say only few of the players from that team remain. All those fans have been through all this shit, and I'm sure it's still going to be hard for all the players to go to the building knowing that an icon in their franchise was lost this summer, but their fans are having a fucking bad enough time. I would love for something to go unexpectedly right for them this year. And now this is a regret. I wish that I could have opened the preview saying that.
Yeah.
Instead of being like,
well, I don't think
everything about this team kind of sucks, which it does.
Right. Well, yeah. I mean, there are some like pillars of maybe some brightness where, like, I really like Connor Zary and what I saw from him last year. I think that he can be a really good player for them for a while. Rasmus Anderson is one of my favorite defensemen, like most underrated defensemen in the league. But like outside of that, like, you don't have a lot that's exciting or great.
Well, have not mentioned yet, I'm surprised it took this long, Dustin Wolf, who...
Oh, yeah.
This is a very Calder candidate-heavy division, which is amazing. Whether it's guys on the Ducks, certainly guys on the Sharks, and 7th best odds to win the Calder, Dustin Wolf, really good AHL player who's kind of earned his bones there. I'm not
putting my money on a goaltender playing behind a pretty bad defense.
I think, and I've made this joke now already about Michkov if he helps the Flyers score a single power play goal this season, but if Dustin Wolf does something to make you think he deserves Calder this year, then he deserves the heart. Then he deserves the heart, because it means that this team didn't allow a ton of goals, and they didn't allow a ton of goals last year, but they had Jacob Markstrom. They are taking a big step backwards there. I do think the pairing or the tandem of Dustin Wolf and old friend Dan Vladar, who's still there, is a lot of fun.
I do want to point out, like, they didn't give up a ton of goals last year, but they did start the season with Zadorov and Hanifin, and like they had guys.
The exodus that team has experienced is really something.
Yeah.
Just like,
especially defensively, like those two guys, and then you have Elias Lindholm, who's like one of the better defensive forwards in the league.
Right.
Like that exodus there has been pretty crazy, and I do. And even when those guys were there, it seemed like they didn't want to be there. Like the vibes around that team over the past few years. I mean, I guess even going back to Tkachuk, Gaudreau, like guys have just wanted out of there for a while now, and they gotta figure that out. They have to have people want to be there. Maybe it starts with like their facilities, because I remember when they made like the Huberdeau and Weegar trade, like they had the video of Weegar showing up to the locker room, and you're like, "This is your locker room?"
do you remember that, Sean?
Mm-hmm.
It was
like a high school locker room.
That was a day on hockey Twitter, formerly known as X. That was a real day of people being like, "Oh my God, this excitement that we're having about the Flames basically getting half of the Panthers roster is actually making us feel really weird about the Flames." So they finished 5th in the Pacific last year, which is really kind of wild, and you can't do that without having the Sharks and the Ducks in your division, two teams that really ended up having very rough goes of it. I think it's almost impressive that they finished 5th with what they've been going through the last couple of years. Is there a way in which you could see by season's end the arrow pointing up for the Flames? Because my fear for them is that it really is one of those, whatever the emoji is, where the arrow's just pointing both ways, and they're just going to be in purgatory for a while.
Well, I mean, I
or
honestly,
maybe they could suck, and that
that's what I was going to say. I think bottoming out would be the arrow pointing up, because at least you've got a a clearer sense of direction. And like if it bottoms out, it forces you to realize that whatever you're doing is not working, and you got to blow it up, you got to retool, and you have the capital to maybe start moving towards that in terms of draft and things like that. And speaking of moving towards it, the thing that I just mentioned, they did unveil arena plans this summer, and it literally says on this NHL.com headline, Flames unveil arena plans, expect new home to help attract talent.
I was going to say, I just typed in Calgary Flames locker room. It very much looks like an AHL locker room. And then also when you do that, for some reason, multiple pictures of the Oilers locker room pop up next to it. And brother,
the Oilers locker room is unbelievable.
The difference is truly unbelievable.
Yeah. So.
Well, I was going to say we sort of ended on a positive note for the Flames. They're building something.
Yeah.
Even if it means
it's
like
just a building.
They are making a building. Flames, we want the arrow to point up. Maybe it will. Let's discuss now your Stanley Cup favorite, Edmonton Oilers. And I don't even know how to lead this conversation because we oddly, I swear, haven't talked about the Oilers in a couple of weeks because there did end up being like 3 hours this offseason where something involving the Oilers didn't happen. But obviously, they loaded up, are going for it, made a bunch of moves, made a bunch of additions. It's the first full year of Chris Knobloch as head coach. How do you feel about the Edmonton Oilers going into the 2024-25 season?
Hard to feel anything other than like very good. I mean, they did load up, and I think that honestly, like the biggest win of this offseason for them was escaping the, well, you got to do it this year thing. Like maybe they do have to do it in terms of like having their best roster, but you're escaping the Leon Draisaitl, all that chatter, getting him locked up essentially means that you lock him up and also Connor McDavid, because we think that that's definitely coming. So like that's huge for them. And they are positioned now to have one of the most exciting top sixes that I can recall in hockey.
I think they definitely have the best top six in the NHL just because, and I've been looking at like all the lines of all these different teams as we do these previews and try to figure out who can mix and match with who. And then you get to the Oilers and their first line is Ryan Nugent-Hopkins, Connor McDavid, and Zach Hyman. And that takes your breath away.
But like it's also like the strength of this team too is that may not be their first line, and you can swap. They have a lot of flexibility, and no matter what you do, it's still going to be fucking awesome.
And
like Ryan Nugent-Hopkins, if he's your third line center at any point, unbelievable. Like Adam Henrique can slide up, can slide down. They just have a ton of utility and flexibility within that lineup, and it's very, very exciting.
So much of that is bringing Adam Henrique back, which is not something that I expected. I was so excited when they signed Jeff Skinner. Arvidsson I thought was interesting. I thought the Arvidsson thing right out of the gate in free agency was hey, we might be moving and shaking a bunch of things or losing a bunch of guys. Let's just make sure that we get one guy who we could say, well, here's Draisaitl's wing. And then at the very least, no matter what happens, we got Draisaitl a wing, because that had kind of been a discussion at points during the postseason. But shortly after, they signed Jeff Skinner, and then they bring back Adam Henrique, who listens to Zach Hyman in that impassioned post-game thing from Game 7 of like, guys, come back. Like everybody, hopefully we can all come back. Adam Henrique returns and is probably going to be their third line center. Don't sleep on Connor Brown. Don't sleep on Connor Brown with the season he had last year where he didn't score famously at all. Scored a goal late in the regular season, and it seemed like almost a pity party for him. And then he ended up being a really, really good postseason player for them. He's going to be a bottom six contributor who will be really good. Matthias Janmark, who scored the only goal in Game 7, good penalty. Like they just have so much, as you said, utility in their offense. And I want to bring up a stat that Jason Gregor noted, which was that in signing Jeff Skinner, the Oilers have 4 of the top 20 5-on-5 scorers over the last 3 seasons. I didn't even mention that they lost Warren Fogle, who's a really good 5-on-5 scorer. That doesn't even matter that they lost Warren. And on top of it all, they're doing the thing, which is Evander Kane, who needed abdominal surgery, forgot to get it until just a few days ago. And now you have to start the 6-month clock on that recovery now. Whoa, what if he's going to miss the whole season?
What an inconvenience.
Now he's not going to be able to come back until the salary cap doesn't matter in the playoffs. So, in addition to all the stuff that we said with their forwards, and not they're going to be adding it forward, they have $946,000 in cap space. In real, honest to goodness, we're not cheating cap space because they didn't bring back Broberg or Holloway, who they famously let walk. They did move on from Cody Ceci. Now they have like an actual honest $1 million in cap space somehow, plus another 525 they can go over during the regular season. They got those picks, second rounder and third rounder from St. Louis. Do they have their own first rounder? No. They traded it. They wanted to make a pick at the Sphere. Happens to the best of us. Whatever. But they've got over $6 million to play with, and second round pick from a bad team, third round pick from a bad team, their 2026 first rounder. They are positioned somehow to add to this group, and it'll probably be on defense because Matthias Ekholm, 34 years old, has been an absolute godsend for them. Evan Bouchard going into the final year before he will be a restricted free agent, so he's going to be due big money, and he's going to try to command it with a huge performance. Darnell Nurse, second pair left side, and Ty Emberson. Really, really interesting addition. And I think it's interesting from both sides. We'll talk about this trade a little bit on how it affects the Sharks, but they move off. They want a free space and move Cody Ceci's money. And in doing it, they kind of pay a lot. They give a third round pick to the Sharks to get back a 23-year-old, really, really good young right D who is, by athletics metrics and all that, in the 96th percentile of defensive defensemen. And for what they need, which is partner for Nurse, second pairing guy who maybe ends up being the anchor to that second pair, I love this.
Well, he also has the Knobloch connection, right? Was he
Yes.
not AHL Defenseman of the Year under Chris Knobloch?
He was.
Look at that.
So that's I'm kind of looking at funny. There are some additions, specifically in this Pacific Division, where I'm like, why did a team move that guy? Or why did, in the case of other players, like, why did other teams let this guy sign for just $1 million when he might be making a big impact on this team? So Emberson is fascinating to me. And he only played in 31 games last year because he got hurt in his first full season in the NHL. But I like watch some of his press conferences. Seems to have a good head on his shoulders. Wisconsin kid. He just really checks a lot of our boxes. And that's not even considering the possibility that Darnell Nurse could have a bounce back year after last year and in the postseason really having some struggles before, it should be noted, coming alive a bit in the Stanley Cup final. Like, he rose to the occasion, which was very nice to see.
Yeah, but it came after he got a kick in the pants from being horrendous.
Yeah,
so, like he
First
he
two
heard it,
rounds
he
was-
felt it, and
yeah.
he did bounce back a little bit to his credit. That third pairing though does worry me a bit.
I'll say that for a Stanley Cup favorite, like the slam dunk, this has to be your Stanley Cup favorite or else you're being an asshole in some way, shape, or form. I think that entire third pairing is up for grabs. Like Josh Brown, Brett Kulak, it's probably looking. They lost Vinny Desharnais,
Yeah.
which is kind of like a CC thing where that's not just a player, that's vibes.
He's the nasty on the back end.
He's the tall on the back end.
Yeah.
He is, that's who Stu hugs after games. Winnie
Okay.
Skinny Vinny is what they call it. After games, Stu goes over and he hugs Vinny Desharnais. So
Sad.
keep
That's
an eye
sad.
on that. We have Adam Henrique stepping into the hot guy that isn't Leon role with
There's a lot
Kane
of
out.
those.
I don't know who's going to step into the hugs Stu Skinner role. So I'm sure somebody watching is going to comment and say, Vinny Desharnais didn't play every game. He had to hug
That's
other
true,
guys.
yeah.
I just don't know off
That's
the top of my
true.
head who he hugged. Maybe Bob?
Zach Hyman.
Tough offseason
Zach
for
Hyman
hugs.
seems like a big go-to hug guy.
Zach Hyman, Dad Hyman, had another kid recently.
Oh, that's
So,
huge. Dad strength.
grown-ass dad strength.
With the Stu Skinner, like, what is your... I'm probably asking the wrong person here, but like, what's your read on Stu Skinner? What's your temperature? We've seen him be good. We've seen him be not so hot. Where where's your level of maybe concern or
Well,
vulnerability?
it's just another area where vulnerability is the right word. It's just another area on a slam dunk cup favorite where you're like, but the goaltending could be bumpy at points. Like when Stu's on, he's the balls. He was the best goalie in the Stanley Cup final last year. He outplayed 2 goalies in the last 2 rounds who were handily expected to outplay him, and he was better than Ottinger. He was better than Sergei Bobrovsky.
He was nails for a couple of rounds.
When he's on, like he really is an awesome hockey player, but he is prone to stretches and lapses and moments. You can tell very quickly when he's not on, when he's not settled in. So that could be an area, but they brought Calvin Pickard back, who established himself as somebody who can steady the waters. And Calvin Pickard doesn't strike me as a player who is going to suffer the lows that Stu Skinner can. And obviously he's not going to have the highs of Stu Skinner because he's just not that good a player. But I think that this year, entering the season, their goaltending makes a lot more sense than it did last year. And obviously it went off the rails very quickly last year. But
in a lot of directions too.
yeah. Oh, that's another thing I want to bring up with this team. Like, what's the regular season going to look like when they're not chasing it the whole time? Is this should they care about finishing first? Should they care about getting, I think they should want to have the easiest path they can get, but
Well, chasing it honestly helped them for the last 4 months of the season because they felt like they were playing a playoff game every day and they were forced to lock it in. And we used this word a ton last year. That truly galvanized them, and they became they were playing playoff games for 5 months.
we didn't even mention, of all the utility you said they have with their forward group, what if they tell Matt Savoy, hey, you're starting in the AHL and do a Stankoven to us. If you do a Stankoven, we'll have to play you, which is you're playing in the AHL. If you go off, I don't care how good a team we are, there's going to be a spot for you. And that's what I like about this roster, too. I don't need to see Corey Perry play every night.
That's good news because you probably won't.
There will be room for guys if jobs are won. So there's still going to be competition here.
Vasily Podkolzin, too, is an interesting flyer that they took because he's one of those guys that he was good in juniors, had a lot of hype, never really worked out in Vancouver. But there's talent there. It has to be unlocked and it has to happen regularly. But this is a pretty decent place for maybe it to happen. Maybe the change of scenery helps a little bit. Maybe he learns from that group. We'll see. I'm intrigued about that. And I am also, we mentioned Arvidsson earlier. I think I really like the Arvidsson signing. He is a big Oilers type player to me. And a year ago, not last season, but the year before, he scored 26 goals. So that guy can light it up and can be electric. And to add him to this team, I think is really, really intriguing.
Yeah, you can't say watch out for these guys because everybody's constantly watching them and constantly thinking about them. But this should be an unbelievable. We haven't mentioned Connor McDavid. We mentioned Connor McDavid
we don't
once,
have to.
which was to say that he's on their first line.
Yeah.
So in case you didn't know, Connor McDavid is probably going to be on their first line. We didn't mention their power play, which is what's so fun about this. I was on Oilers Nation every day a couple months ago, and they were like, Jeff Skinner, friend of the pod, what do you think? You excited? What do you see for him? And I was like, he's going to get, I could see him getting 24, 25 goals because realistically, he's not going to be on the fucking power play. There's no room on this power play for Jeff Skinner. And he can be on the second unit, but tell you what the second unit doesn't do.
Play.
Get on the ice. Because the Oilers power plays last 22 seconds. He's zipping around, then Evan Bouchard scores, and it's the coolest thing in the world.
Yeah, that's a good point. He's probably not going to benefit as much as he also doesn't have to be a leader. He doesn't have to do a whole lot. He just has to show up and score.
Yeah, just show up and play with Leon Draisaitl.
Yeah, pretty cool job.
The Athletic put out a thing of tiers of the tiers of players, and obviously, actually, I think that the Avalanche also had 2 players in the top tier in McKinnon and Makar, but McDavid.
I think you could put Ren and 1A, 1B.
They had. I think they only had 2 1A players, which were McDavid and McKinnon.
Okay.
And I was like, I'd nitpick and maybe do McDavid 1A, and then if you want to give like McKinnon the 1B tier to himself, do that, and then put why can't I think of the Tampa Bay Lightning? My God,
Nikita Kucherov.
Kucherov and Draisaitl in like a 1C, and like Matthews in a 1C sort of thing.
I feel like whenever you like power rank NHL players, you have to do the now I'm blanking on his name, the Chiefs fan that's on Fox Sports. He does the Mahomes Mountain when he ranks quarterbacks, and like Mahomes is the standard. He's
yeah.
Why am I blanking on his name? He's the one that everyone hates. Anyways, but like the ranking always starts with like, this is the Connor McDavid ranking.
Yeah. Pete and I used to have an argument about who's the third best player in the NHL. And it's like we don't necessarily know who even the second one is, but like no, but it's Leon Draisaitl.
Yeah, there's not like you don't mention McDavid because you don't have to. What needs to be said about this guy that everybody doesn't already know?
Last thing I want to give you, what is the longest winning streak for the Edmonton Oilers, or I'll say over under? What should it be? Should it be 11, 10 and a half?
I was thinking 11 and a half.
11 and a half, because it is uncanny. Bob told us. Bob knew this.
11 and a half seems, maybe 10 and a half.
Friend of the show, Bob Stauffer. If you haven't watched his videos with us, you gotta, because you should watch anything with Bob Stauffer. That Knobloch just goes on winning streaks.
Yep.
And I remember when they were down 3-0, Bob was like, tell you what though, like Knobloch goes on winning streaks.
You need them to lose like 3 games in a row. Wasn't that the stat?
Yes,
like
it was every time they lost 3 games in a row, they would then win like at least 8 in a row or something like that. So
that was the thing in the final. After they lost 3 in a row, they were like, if there's a team that's going to win 4 straight now, it's this team.
After they won, after game 4, sitting around with Bob and friend of the show, Frank Saravalli, like there was kind of this confidence of like, well, like they're going to win a couple now, but like, are they actually going to do 3 in a row, 4 in a row? I think that after losing 3 in a row, they had never not won 4 in a row under Chris Knobloch, and they're just
let's say 11 and a half.
Do they get 12?
I think they can get 12
do a 12er.
It's a long season.
What if they start slow again?
I'm locking in over 12 and a half.
What's that?
Then I'm locking in over 12.
Yeah, if they start slow, then it's like McDavid is famously going to scream at his teammates, and then they're doing like 19.
I'll be honest with you. I assume that you saw the McDavid clip from the thing.
Yeah,
he's an awkward screamer.
Oh yeah. Also, I said
screamer.
So.
I like that he did it, but it was just awkward to see.
Yeah. This means, so if you didn't know that I had seen it, it means you didn't see my reaction to it, which was like, if you guys think that was bad, you should have seen me screaming at Pete and Sean after all those games, just fucking like slapping you in the face with a handful of gummy bears.
By the way, Nick Wright was the guy.
I was thinking of somebody else whose name I also couldn't think of. But that's your Edmonton Oilers preview. Probably talk to you soon about the Edmonton Oilers, but more soon we will talk to you about the Los Angeles Kings, who finished 3rd in the Pacific. This is going to be the first full year of Jim Hiller. He took over for a team that was in 4th place at the time of them firing Todd McClellan, but really whipped them into shape. They went 21-12-1, got 3rd in the Pacific. I think really had a respectable season last year for all of the madness that they were enduring. And as a result of all the madness, they've kind of trimmed some things, cleaned some things up a little bit. You mentioned Victor Arvidsson. It's going to be a big loss for them, but I think a more welcome loss, which is they pulled the plug on the Pierre-Luc Dubois experiment without having to pay for it.
Yeah.
So that's where they are.
And as a result of that, they get Darcy Kemper. And so not to belabor the point, like this season is going to come down to goaltending. Like they need to figure out goaltending. They're going to live and die by their goaltending. And I don't have a ton of faith in it. I like their team. I like their lineup. I think they've got a lot. And like they're going to be a pretty hardworking team, good forechecking team. If they don't get the goaltending, it's not going to fucking matter.
So I think you seem like you're not a David Riddick guy, which is
no.
I mean, he didn't prove. None of us proved to be a David Riddick guy.
One's called him Big Save Dave. At this point, I would take any Save Dave, please.
Okay, so it's interesting that you go right to goaltending. You know where I go, which is where I usually go, down the middle, because they pull the plug on Pierre-Luc Dubois, move him to Washington.
Who I saw live on Tuesday night, by the way.
Yeah, that's right.
That's
Yes.
right.
He did play in that
Sean
game.
got to see
He was
the legend PLD in the Capitals uniform.
I should have gone.
It was beautiful.
It should have been me.
He was on the line with Tom Wilson. It was very fun.
That's the Capitals are going to be awesome. That's your Kings preview. No, they needed Pierre-Luc Dubois to be the second line center, but really eventual successor to Anze Kopitar. Now that becomes Quinton Byfield, who
And he's certainly more equipped to do that.
I think it makes a lot more sense for him
Yes.
to do that. But now Quinton Byfield goes from playing with other guys who can kind of be the breadwinners of that line, and Byfield, hey, you just be the scorer, to now, I mean, right now, actually, this looks like a pretty bitchin' line. Daily Faceoff has Quinton Byfield on the second line between Kevin Fiala and Warren Fogle. 5-on-5, that's kind of my time. Like I like that line a lot, but it's what's he going to be in this first year of this 5 times $6.125 million deal that can immediately look like a sweetheart of a deal if he ends up being really a good top 6 center. But that's kind of the story for me with the Kings is how does the reorg work for them?
I think it's going to be fine. I don't worry about them down the middle. I still think they're really fucking strong. Like, I expect Byfield to be good. And like maybe even we can put a stamp like a rival season if it wasn't last year. I think that he is going to vault himself into superstardom, whether it's this year or next year, but like soon. I don't worry about their lineup as much as I worry about the back end and specifically goaltending. It's just, I think they're going to be good enough. I think their system is good enough for them to contend, and it's just like really kind of begins and ends for me at the goaltending situation.
But they tightened it up with Hiller, and they finished with like good numbers as far as goals against went and as far as penalty kill went. A good thing for them is that they had 5 20 goal scorers last season, and they're all back. Trevor Moore, Kevin Fiala, Adrian Kempe, Anze Kopitar, and Quinton Byfield. But especially in relation to one of those names that I just mentioned, we are kind of on window watch because Anze Kopitar is 37, Drew Doughty is 34, and yes, Byfield is the future, and you have other contributors that are 27, 28, but it's kind of now or never for this Kings group if they want to get those guys another one.
Yeah, but like those guys are still cooking. Like they were really good last year.
Kopitar, yeah.
And Adrian Kempe might be my like most favorite underrated guy in the league. He rules.
He's your favorite like 4th best player on a team kind of thing.
Yeah. Like I would love to have him on basically any team. He's just like he can do everything. Yeah, it's like their back end, like maybe some vulnerability in spots, but I just think that they're one of those teams that they'll be in the mix, and it's just do they have the strength in like every area where they won't get exposed when they run into a team like the Oilers again? Like I don't know. I don't know if they're bulletproof.
I'll be honest, I don't think this is a particularly good roster, but
Really?
I do, or like a particularly.
I think it's a good roster, but it's not a bulletproof roster.
We also just talked about the Oilers, so maybe like I'm looking at a normal NHL roster after looking at a stupid, ridiculous NHL roster, but I think that this is maybe the season where they either fall to being a wild card team or maybe just fall out of it. But as we'll get to with other teams in the Pacific Division, maybe teams that are usually there won't be there anyway. So they'll be in the mix, I'll say.
and they probably won't be that exciting, but like they'll be pretty good.
Yeah.
Like, they don't jump off like with the exception of Byfield. I think he's probably maybe if you want to say like Doughty, he's like I don't even want to throw Doughty in there because like Byfield is probably their like showstopper.
Yeah.
And that might be it.
I think a lot's riding on Byfield, and not as much as was riding on PLD last year. But I was going to say, for as much as I'm not blown away by this roster, I do think last year was probably a season long. Like, why isn't this working? What the like you experience a coaching change, and even Hiller was an interim coach at the time, so it was just kind of like we don't know who's going to be here. Now they did enough in the offseason to establish like this is what we're working with. This is what it's going to be. And not to make it all about like, hey, the bad guy's gone with Pierre-Luc Dubois, or hey, the bad guy's gone with Todd McClellan. But I think the PLD experiment had to be frustrating and confusing for teammates last year. So to have it over and be like, all right, this is what we are down the middle. And we haven't mentioned Philip Deneau, who very good option as a third line center.
Oh, yeah.
So
lockdown guy. That's the guy that I want as my third line center.
Yeah, I don't hate them. I was going to say I don't hate them. I don't love them. But I actually like generally do love the Kings. So I don't hate them. I love them. There's your Kings preview. Should we hit an ad read, John? All right, let's talk about Indeed, because if you are hiring, you should want Indeed, and I'll tell you why. We're driven by the search for better, but when it comes to hiring, the best way to search for a candidate isn't to search at all. Don't search. Match with Indeed. If you need to hire, you need Indeed. Indeed is your matching and hiring platform with over 350 million global monthly visitors, according to Indeed data, and a matching engine that helps you find quality candidates fast. Ditch the busy work. Use Indeed for scheduling, screening, and messaging so you can connect with candidates faster. Listeners of this show will get a $75 sponsored job credit to get your jobs more visibility at Indeed.com/AllCity. Just go to Indeed.com/AllCity right now and support our show by saying you heard about Indeed on this podcast. Indeed.com/AllCity. Terms and conditions may apply. Need to hire? You need Indeed.
I also want to talk about our friends at PXG, because a big goal of mine this summer was to get my golf game on point. It went relatively well, but the credit that I can give goes to PXG, because my bag is now almost exclusively full of PXG clubs. About a year ago, they gave me the PXG Black Ops driver, and boy, I love that thing. This year, towards the tail end of the season, I got the PXG Black Ops irons, and boy, I love those irons, because there's nothing better. Actually, I don't know what's better, hitting a great driver shot or like really nailing the iron.
Well,
Really nailing the iron.
I
Yes,
think really
because-
nailing the iron, because I have a lot of faith in myself being able to hit the drive, but when the iron game isn't honed in,
It
and
requires-
you're taking a gamble
Yes.
on the fucking fairway where you're either the worst feeling in golf is hitting a great drive
Yes, and
and
then
then hitting
fucking it up with the
and
iron.
shanking the iron.
so
Yes.
we are complete opposites. I'm not particularly good with the driver, but very confident with my irons.
Really?
Yeah.
That is
No,
Rare.
I'm the complete opposite.
because I'm not confident with either, but I know
it's all relative.
that every once in a while I can get a hold of a drive and send that
Yeah.
shit straight down the fairway.
Exactly.
But then it requires like actual skill and finesse to hit a good
Yeah,
iron
and
shot.
then that feeling lasts for about like 30 seconds as
Yeah.
you drive to the ball and then
Yep.
shank the iron.
And
And
that-
you're like, oh my God.
That's
now I'm
another
hitting
thing.
three.
If you're better with irons than drivers, you don't have the pressure to follow it up, because even when you get a good shot off an iron, you're like, that was already like my fourth stroke.
Yeah, right.
So-
True.
Plus
This
you
frees
can-
you up a little bit.
You can like recover from a bad drive with a good iron shot.
Correct. Yes.
Other way around, not so much, I guess.
Yeah. So PXG did help me with my iron game this year. I love the PXG Black Ops irons. It started when I booked my fitting at PXG in Boston. You go to the location nearest to you. You bring your current irons, and you take the PXG Black Ops Irons Challenge. You hit your regular irons into that simulator. Then they fit you custom to your swing with the PXG irons that you need. And let me tell you what, the forgiveness on those irons is just what I needed, because as we've mentioned, forgiveness, I need quite a bit of it with the iron game. They feature X-Core 2 technology, dual cavity design that combines high strength, ultra thin miraging steel club faces to deliver superior forgiveness, absolutely explosive distance, and a feel that's softer than a baby bunny. New Black Ops irons are incredibly easy to hit, and they maximize performance and fun. And they're only $149.99 a stick. Incredible price for a great golf iron. So take the PXG Irons Challenge. It's a ton of fun. You get to hit a bunch of balls into the simulator. And if the new Black Ops irons don't outperform your current irons by delivering either more distance or tighter dispersion, which means better accuracy. During your fitting, you'll get a $100 MasterCard rewards card. Hurry, this offer ends October 7th. Book your fitting today at pxg.com. That's pxg.com.
One of the more exciting teams, at least in the beginning of the season, will be the San Jose Sharks. But I think it'll be interesting throughout the season because they have such an influx of young players, of course, headlined by the first overall pick, Macklin Celebrini, and Will Smith making the jump from college. But first-year coach, Ryan Warsofsky, they did more than just add young guys, but a lot of their identity will be young guys. They've got 3 of the top 8 betting favorites for Calder. Celebrini tied with Matvei Michkov for first, Will Smith 6th, and then Yaroslav Askarov, who they got from the Predators after he was like, I want to play in the NHL. So they got a stud goaltending prospect. And then really, like, you look down the middle, their top 3 centers are all new guys. Macklin Celebrini first line, Will Smith second line, Alex Wenberg third line, and a lot of newcomers. Not, as I said, not all young guys, but mostly the story with this is how will all these young guys adjust to the NHL?
Yeah, that's going to be the storyline around them, and it's going to be fun. It may not be pretty, it may not be successful for a lot of this year, but it's going to be fun to watch these guys. Like, obviously, you've got Celebrini, which is going to be the headliner for a lot of people, but like Fabian Zetterlund scored 24 goals last year. Eklund had 16 goals. Like, both those guys really impressed me, and they could take additional steps forward. Will Smith, I love. I think that he's going to be unbelievable. I'm hoping to see a bit of Quentin Musty, a good amount of Quentin Musty this year. Like, they've got an awesome core. It's not going to be there immediately.
But what I'll give, and obviously, correct. Let's love them and let's not put too much pressure on them. Let's not like
love them and
obviously
let them
like,
grow.
What's that?
Love them and let them grow.
Yes, love them and let them grow. And they did, in a couple of ways, kind of what the Chicago Blackhawks did when they had the first overall pick with Connor Bedard, which is, yeah, our story basically is going to be a bunch of young guys headlined by this first overall pick, but let's make it an environment in which growing is logical and kind of makes sense. So I mentioned Ty Emberson with the Oilers preview, and I'm like, why though exactly would the Sharks get rid of this guy? They're such a young team, 23-year-old right defenseman. Like, that's is really good at suppressing goals. Like, shouldn't that be the kind of guy you want? They trade him and pick up a 3rd-round pick to bring in Cody Ceci, who's like, you know what? If there's one thing we could say about Cody Ceci, it's that his teammates absolutely love him. He's going to be great for the room. They signed Tyler Toffoli, who, Stanley Cup champion, still has a lot to give, is going to be really good on the power play with Celebrini and whoever else gets on there. Like, they're able to like transplant entire parts of a team, which is they now have, didn't even mention their captain Logan Couture, but like they now have,
I constantly forget that he's on the team.
I know. Me too. But they now have like new veterans to go with all of these young guys who are really making their bones in the NHL. So I like the way that they went about that, instead of just being like, oh, how do we make sure we have the most cap space and how do we make sure we maximize? They're like, you know what? Let's make it so it's cool for Will Smith to come to the rink every day, and it's cool for Macklin Celebrini to shoot the shit with Tyler Toffoli or get his chops busted by, I don't know, Cody Ceci.
Yeah, I mean, like, not only that, it's you can't.
Everybody, Goudreau too, who ends up being kind of fucked over, but can help this team and this young group.
And it's like, it's cool that Goudreau, who started his career and was like kind of an AHL stud in San Jose, is back and seems to be wanted by that team, even if he didn't want them. I just think like it's everybody, when it comes to young teams, they're like, why do you give a spot to a guy like Cody Ceci? Why do you sign like Tyler Toffoli? Like, just let the young guys run the show and build towards the future. You can't do that. You have to have the older guys too. Like,
Sean, could you tell us why you don't do that?
Then you're the Buffalo Sabres.
Then you're the Buffalo Sabres.
Oh, yeah.
Like Felger voice. Then you're the Buffalo Sabres.
Hey, we had Kyle Oposo.
That's right. You did.
Yeah, you
but you don't want to do the like, hey, it's okay, just go out and be young. Like, you want to say that when there's a bunch of old guys there too, to make sure that you're asking the right questions, you're making the right mistakes,
learning good habits.
Yeah.
It's you have to have that mix, and we've seen plenty of teams in the past lean too far into the young department, like even like the Ottawa Senators. I think we're kind of stuck there for a bit. This team is not going to be good. We can be honest with ourselves. They're not going to be good, but they're going to be a lot more interesting than they were last year.
Yeah, I think that best case, they score a lot of goals and allow an absolute
Same position as the Ducks.
ton of goals. Yeah. Didn't you mention Jake Wallman they get? That's kind of fun.
Yeah, I guess.
Add
Like
him
dancing.
to that defense. He can like dance with them. They made it so the young guys aren't the most immature guys on the team. So like Macklin Celebrini is
True.
automatically a grizzled veteran because he's not dancing on the ice. Although
And they
Jake
got-
Wallman, that I said that endearing. Dance your fucking heart out, brother.
They do have the best content creation defensive group in the league, because
That's
you've
right.
got Jake Wallman, guy creates content by dancing on the ice, and then you've got Mario Ferraro, who is a YouTuber. So they got that going for him.
Possibilities are endless for the
May
San
not have a
Jose
ton of
Sharks.
wins, but they could have a ton of clicks.
Very, very excited about this team. Also very, very excited about the Seattle Kraken. And I'll be honest, I'm not very excited about the Seattle
I was
Kraken.
going to say, I was like, that seems like a lie.
I'm going to start with an admission. I've lied. But there's exciting things. They had cup winners at kind of all the important positions. Head coach, center, defense. And my biggest question with this team is like, where are the goals going to come from?
Yeah,
But-
that's been the question with them.
Yeah, I don't hate any of the ads. I like Bilesma. Happy for him.
I hate the price.
I
Like Montour and Stevenson were massive overpays, but they identified the players that they wanted, and like to their credit, they seem to identify a style in which they want to play. Like Stevenson and Montour are good at pushing the puck up the ice with speed. So like they may be placing an emphasis on playing really fast.
but
and
you know what Stevenson isn't good at?
staying healthy.
Scoring goals.
Yeah.
And he's a very good middle six forward, but he's not going to answer that question of where the goal is going to come from. And
Yeah.
one of the places could be Matty Beniers, who took a step back in his second season,
A
like
little quiet, yeah.
kind of big time. 57 points as a rookie, 37 points in his second year, and then he signed 7 times $7.14 million, and that is a risk I would take if I were the Kraken. But you hate to say to a guy entering his third year, like, you need to pick it up, but like, he needs to step it up for this team to arrive in the way that it wants to.
100%, but it's also like it's a little unfair. He came into the NHL and they were like 1C.
Face of the franchise,
Yeah.
everything you have to, but like just the way the roster is constructed, again, I ask, where are the goals going to come from?
And like we both like building teams down the middle, and when you're relying on a second year player to be like basically the engine that makes your team go, you're in a weird spot. Especially like Shane Wright has taken a while to develop and arrive to the NHL. They were hoping to build as like their top two centers in Matty Beniers and Shane Wright. Shane Wright, I think this is a big year for finding out who he is, what he can do for that team. I'm not gonna like expect a ton, but if he is really good and takes a step forward, they're in a much better position.
Would love for him to be a good third line center. But the problem with that, and correct me if I'm wrong, I'm just not crazy enough about their wings that if he's a third line center, and with as big prospect as he is, he should be the driver. But like he'll just have to really be the driver, and he's gonna have to be the guy on whatever line he's on most likely, because he's not gonna be on the first line, he's not gonna be on the second line.
He could be on the second line. Like if he starts playing
Like,
well,
kick him to wing, or or just like ahead of Stevenson, because Stevenson I think is a fine third line guy.
they have like, but that's the problem is that they have this abundance of maybe third line centers. You've got Stevenson, you got Yanni Gord, you got Shane Wright. Like one of those guys has to play above what we expect from them to really kind of solidify this lineup.
You know how many 20-goal scorers the Kraken had last season? This is disgusting.
0?
2?
Sean is correct.
Guessing McCann and Bjorkstrand.
Who
was that?
Who had 20?
McCann and Bjorkstrand.
Yes.
My,
Gross.
my biggest
Who was
question.
the first one?
Jared
McCann.
Okay.
My biggest question
Yeah.
about this team this year is
Bjorkstrand's good though.
is
Bjorkstrand's
anyone
really good.
going to save Oliver Bjorkstrand from going to the All-Star game? Or is he going to be forced to go again?
Famously, he could have been an all-star and did not want to be.
Well,
Right? Oh, he booked an
was
Airbnb.
all-star.
Oh, right.
He had to
booked an
cancel
Airbnb?
his trip. He was
was
supposed to go
not
on
happy about
vacation.
having to go.
They called him in. They were like, "You're going to have to cancel that trip." And he was like, cool, thanks."
Airbnb needs to just be consistent across the board with how their deposit situation works, because it seems that each one is different. Where it'd be like, you want to pay, hey, give us $300 now, the rest when you check in, and sometimes it's refundable, sometimes it's not refundable, and it seems like it's on a case-to-case basis. So Oliver Bjorkstrand, while that was not a complaint you had about Airbnb, I stand with you.
Hell yeah, brother. Yeah, the Kraken are like almost an impossible team to project based off of like how many things are up in the air. Because like we haven't seen Dan Bylsma coach in the NHL in a long time. Was really good in the AHL with the Coachella Valley Firebirds.
I think that's right, yeah.
And like
Bringing a very
He's-
esteemed staff with him.
yeah, right. And like
A lot of staff talk.
in like it's a promotion within the
Yep.
organization, so like that could work out. Like it could be comfortable for him. I definitely think they needed a system shift and a culture shift. Like they were trending in the wrong direction based off of like a really what I would consider a successful and impressive first season, but like they just have so much up in the air.
Yeah, and I know that Marchessault was very excited to go to the Predators, but I feel like they just kind of spent the money wrong in free agency. And love Brandon Montour. He wouldn't have been the ad if I were like I would have
like
spent it
their
on
back
wing.
end. I just in like
But their defense was already okay, and now like their defense right now has a lot of like, yeah, I like that guy.
they play good team defense for the most part. It's just they don't score. And then like I think Montour will help them both on the power play and in
play a million
generating
minutes.
Yeah, and it just gives them a weapon at the top of the zone. Will help like just diversify their offense a little bit. So like I don't mind that ad. It comes down to the price point that I really didn't like. They overpaid like crazy for both those guys. But like I think that this could be a very respectable team. But like at the end of the day, what you really want to see if you're a Kraken fan is Beniers get back on the horse, Shane Wright take a big step forward, and then like have good early returns on the guys that you brought in to be the big tickets.
Yeah, and then you're in business. Probably not this year, but then you have something going. You have a strong base in addition to some very nice jerseys. I've been waiting all episode, Sean, if you want to swap out. I've been waiting all episode to ask if people are viewing the Vancouver Canucks correctly, because this is a team that won the Pacific Division last season. You could say arrived. Quinn Hughes wins the Norris. They lose in 7 games to the Western Conference champion. Like there's so much about this team that you have to respect and you have to like. And then the Tides were kind of crazy and wishy-washy in the offseason, and we now wake up with them tied for 13th with the Los Angeles Kings in betting odds to win the Stanley Cup. Realistically, how much worse are the Canucks, and do you think their demise has been overstated?
I definitely think they're worse. I don't know if their demise is overstated. Like, where are they projected to finish in the division based on the betting odds? Do we know?
Ooh, good
I mean,
question.
obviously the Oilers
Sean, you want to
first.
jump on them? Oh, those are the Cup odds. Oh, yeah. I guess you could just go by. They're tied with the Kings.
So like second
Famously.
or third in the division, they're projected. It appears.
Looks like it, yeah. Behind the
Tied for
Oilers.
third.
Behind the
Oh
Oilers.
no, behind
Knights
the Oilers
Kings.
and the Golden Knights,
And they're tied with, so tied
Right.
for third.
So like tied for the third best odds. I think that's about right, but
I also
I
think-
wouldn't. I don't know if I would put Vegas like above them.
Yes, I think that Vegas is being overrated there, but also like Vegas is just one of those teams that
They're always fucking
you have to
hanging
well, they always are there, but also I feel like when you're making betting odds, you have to It's like making the Bruins a like top 5 team every year. Like people who are casual sports fans are going to be like, I think the Bruins will win this year, just because whenever they watch hockey, the Bruins are pretty good.
Yeah.
So maybe that's kind of what that is. But
I think as far as the Canucks go, like they're not going to be as bad as they were 2 years ago. They're probably not going to be as good as they were last year. But the truth lies somewhere in the middle, and that's still really good. Like they're a playoff team, absolutely. The question that maybe like pushes them more in one direction than the other is like, what's their goaltending situation?
What's Demko?
Like it seems like the Demko situation is pretty bad, and Shelov's has some questions of his own.
Yeah,
but if Shelov's is the guy that we saw in the playoffs, he was a fucking dog.
I loved Shelov's in the playoffs. Yeah. You want to talk about somebody who arrived? Absolutely, but beyond that, like, what if it's Shelov's and if Demko's out? They lost Casey DeSmith. Mm-hmm. Been doing a lot of Casey DeSmith talk on this podcast recently, but
a surprising amount.
UNH guy, what do you want from me? I'm also hammering Warren Fogle takes in this episode, but they also did, though, the thing that I don't like to do, which is they got better. They got, I would say, quite a bit better on the wing while getting worse down the middle and on D. Their big fish is Jake DeBrusk. Very cautiously excited about that because I love Jake DeBrusk, the player. Love Jake DeBrusk, the guy. Jake DeBrusk has gone from playing for the Boston Bruins, being a goal scorer for the Boston Bruins, to being a goal scorer for the Vancouver Canucks. Jake, I love you. Have you considered playing hockey in a market that will just like let you be?
Yeah,
because
right.
He's gone from one pressure cooker to another, and in doing so, is the face of an offseason that saw them lose Elias Lindholm, Nikita Zadorov, Casey DeSmith.
I think you're right on the money there because we've seen it in Vancouver. They get on streaky players. Like Elias Pettersson can be very streaky. I think he's an incredible player. He is not super consistent, and they crush him when he's down. Jake DeBrusk is an extremely streaky player. He disappears for large chunks of times. When he's on, he's great. And like he's going to be an awesome player for that team when he's on. He's not going to be on all the time.
Right. Make the playoffs, though, Canucks. Make the playoffs. And when you see playoff Jake DeBrusk, not all rounds are created equal, but
people will be deleting tweets when he gets to the playoffs and scores.
When you see Jake DeBrusk get going in the playoffs, hoo boy. He love him as a player, but as Pete noted, he is a streaky player, and he'll tell you that himself. And not streaky in that, like, hey, DeBrusk has gone like 5 games without a point.
Oh no, it'll be like 14.
Funny, whatever. Like, it will get into a thing where you're like, what are they like? Do they scratch this player? It's the damnedest thing.
And maybe this is a case for like a lot of streaky players. Like it's not a case of like not caring.
No,
but like he cares too much. Like not cares too much, but it's between the ears.
Yeah.
I think he really is tough on himself and overanalyzes his own game and is like paralysis by analysis.
He's also just got the greatest heart in the world. So I'll say Vancouver Canucks fans,
be nice.
Be nice. Love him.
That's a waste of breath telling Canucks fans to be nice.
I know, but like love him because he's going to love you.
Yeah.
Like he is going to love that team so much, and he'll be a very good addition vibes-wise, which we love. Dan Heinen, I think, is one of the more underrated pickups of the offseason because
was last year too.
Last season, he was why is he on a PTO type of thing?
Outrageous.
They sign him and he rips off, he scored 19 goals, 17 goals, something like that.
He was really good 2 years ago in Pittsburgh. Like a PTO after that year was crazy to me. And I thought he had a great season with the Bruins. He's not a guy that's going to score a bunch, which I'm looking at
last year.
He scored like 18?
Yeah, some
goals?
17, something. Yeah.
Yeah. Which is on the higher end of what to expect from Dan Heinen.
Yeah,
I think the goals are an added bonus. He's just a guy that's going to go into the lineup and do everything right, like as a 200-foot player. But every goal that he scores, you're like, oh, nice. That's a nice little bonus.
And any spot that he takes up, even if you're like, do I want him on my second line right now? Like, he is going to actually hold down that spot and be difficult to play against. He's a good defensive player. He's just a very well-rounded player who will get you 15 goals. And I guess that when I say he scored a bunch, it's that I consider him to be not a goal scorer, which he isn't. He's not a goal scorer. But then when you get 15 goals from a player who is not a goal scorer, you're like, hey, that guy ain't so bad. So they get...
Sure, but like we're talking about like the Bruins last year, he spent most of the time bottom 6-ish. And like you're looking at Daily Faceoff right now, projecting these lines. He's a first line left wing.
All right. Have to note, of course, we haven't mentioned Dakota Joshua, who they signed back and had a testicular cancer diagnosis this summer. So obviously, we wish him the absolute best. We're a big Dakota Joshua podcast. But that's like when guys are injured or if guys are sick or guys are in and out of the line, like Danton Heinen is a player you want on your roster who you're like, fuck, suddenly our Dakota Joshua probably ideally is like a third line left wing. Like, oh my God, like something horrible has happened to our third line left wing. Danton Heinen can do that. Danton Heinen can play that position. You can move him around. He's not making a ton of money. Shouldn't make a ton of money. Doesn't command a ton of money. Like a very useful piece. That's the guy that at a trade deadline, a cup contender trades for like a big name defenseman and a big name forward. And then Danton Heinen. And in the playoffs, you're like, thank God they got Danton Heinen, huh?
Yeah, he's a guy who like should finish his career playing for like eight teams.
Two other players.
Any team can use him.
Two other players I want to mention. One, why was Daniel Sprong a 1-year, $975,000 deal? Granted, all he does is like all he can do is like shoot and score. It's kind of the only thing he can do.
It's a valuable commodity.
But he can actually do that, and he's 27 years old, so that's kind of weird to me. And then the other one is Jonathan Lekkerimäki. Lekkerimäki, is that his name? I believe. Lekkerimäki, the 2022 15th overall pick, who they, I think, might give an actual shot to. And if so, and you got young guys contributing, and you got Daniel Sprong right now, it looks like him before. Like, I love Connor Garland. We love him.
This lineup that we're looking at, this projected lineup, does not seem like it's going to be what we see.
It's going to be fluid. We haven't even mentioned Arshdeep yet.
Yeah, oh yeah. Oh yeah.
He's about to go Arshdeep on them.
Nils Höglander. Like Nils Höglander, right? Like he could slide up and down. So there's a lot of talent on this team. They have a lot of nice pieces. It's certainly not as impressive on paper as it was last year, but the true thing that we learned last year about the Canucks is now they have a great head coach.
Yeah.
Who gets them to play for him every single night, and they play winning hockey. Like, they're going to be a good team.
Looking at their projected lines, you know what's really fun? And it's not fun, but just cool, I guess. Third pairing right now, they have Derek Forbort and Vinny Desharnais. That's just like a no house for anybody. And also, we'll be in the defensive zone the whole time.
Caved in, yes.
We'll be absolutely caved in. But they're probably not going to score.
They're PK.
And also they might
Forbort's
score.
a great PK guy.
Which they're middle of the pack there last year, so they could use that.
So the thing about the Canucks is that last year, like, had a really impressive roster, but they also had one of the best players at every position basically all year long with Elias Pettersson, Quinn Hughes, and Thatcher Demko. How much regression is there going to be? Like, Demko's not going to be in, but like maybe there's not a steep drop off if Shelovs is really good and plays. But like, is Quinn Hughes going to have a Norris caliber season again?
I have an answer for that.
I think he's capable of it.
Yeah.
Yeah.
He is that guy.
Elias Pettersson, is he going to be one of the best forwards in hockey for most of the year?
I have questions about that because I'm wondering, like, with what we saw as the postseason went on, and it was like, where is he?
Yeah.
And is he beginning that contract? Year 1, year 2? Elias Pettersson?
I want to say that he was on... I think he might be starting it this year.
Yeah, I believe this is year 1.
But anyway, at the beginning...
year 1, yep.
Like, they chose their Elias.
Yeah.
And I would have chosen Elias Pettersson, too.
Oh, yeah.
Like,
oh, yeah.
chose the correct Elias. But I don't know. I don't think that he's going to be terrible or anything, or I don't even think that he's going to be
But there might be
below
regression.
very good, but maybe he's not unbelievable.
Right.
I think this team got worse. Clearly, on paper, it got worse, but they're still a playoff team, and I think that they're probably still a top 3 team in the division.
Yep.
All right, there's your Vancouver Canucks. And now to the Vegas Golden Knights, which, man, kind of a tough one to wrap your head around. They got the last wild card spot last year, and they did lose a bunch in free agency, and now they kind of pivot to maybe leaning on the first full years of their deadline additions last year, and Noah Hannafin, who they got and signed, and Tomas Hertl, who they inexplicably picked up.
Not inexplicably, like unfathomably acquired.
Stunning. But they lost on the wings big time. They lose Marchessault there. They lose Stevenson as well. But yeah, the big thing, I guess, offensively for them is that it's Hertl time. And now your identity is you're Jack Eichel, you're Tomas Hertl down the middle. Mm-hmm. I still don't hate it. Like,
no, why would
they're
you
a
hate
team
that?
that's worse, and they've still got a really good situation. They were probably better down the middle than or if Hertl is Hertl, they're better down the middle now than they were this time last year.
Definitely.
So
Yeah.
that's a step in the right direction. But man, losing Marchessault that's so much of the identity, I feel.
And Stevenson. Like, I think both those guys were key to like their identity as the Golden Knights. But like the thing about the Vegas Golden Knights is that their identity is constantly changing because they are constantly getting guys in and out. It's just that Marchessault was a guy that was there from the beginning and seemed to be a massive curator of vibes.
Yep.
And like really, really beloved in that room. So yeah, I do wonder about like where the vibe drop off is.
An interesting move, too, is that they move on from Logan Thompson, who wanted out. And I'll be honest, shout out Logan Thompson. But as I was watching that first round against the Stars, I was like, get him out of there. He had some bad moments. And Logan Thompson, he's not like a bad player, but he's not a great player. It would seem now that it's kind of the Aiden Hill show, unless Ilya Samsonov, who is used to playing half a season. He played 40 games at least in each of the last 3 seasons. So now does it become the Aiden Hill show, or is Samsonov just taking over for Logan Thompson in a split?
I don't know the answer to it. I think that I think you're getting Samsonov because he's a guy who is used to that split, and then you hopefully are getting good Aiden Hill in the playoffs. Because I don't know if I want Samsonov in the playoffs.
I mentioned Daniel Sprong as a confusing contract or a surprisingly easy get. What about Victor Olofsson, who also got, what up, Sean? I knew that you'd have some sort of reaction
I
to that.
love this addition for the Vegas Golden Knights.
1 year, $1.075 million. He scored 28 goals 2 seasons ago in Buffalo.
That seems like a wildly low number.
What is going on?
For a guy that is like, I was never as high on him as a lot of people seem to be when he was in Buffalo scoring 28 goals, but he's more than $1 million player in the year of our Lord 2024 and 2025 in the NHL.
I'm really confused by that. But now, if you play him with Eichel, 25 goals, easy, at least.
Yeah.
That was the thing. The thing about him is that like the last 3 seasons, basically, it's been like, how are the Sabres getting rid of this guy? Only played 51 games last year, I believe. Like being somewhere where he's obviously it's not long-term stability, but where he can assume he's going to be on the team the entire year and play a full season with a significantly better center than he's been playing with the last couple of years in Buffalo. I feel like he could. I feel like he's a guy that maybe not a lot of people know about that a lot of people are going to learn about.
Here's an over-under for you. Mm-hmm. Will Mark Stone play over or under 58 and a half games?
I don't know. I mean, that question should extend beyond Mark Stone for this team. Like this is one of those teams where you're like,
will Tomas Hertl play?
Yes,
Yeah.
Like Shea Theodore. Like they have a lot of guys.
Was Barbashev hurt last year?
I don't recall. I think that he was. But there's a lot of guys on this team that like miss time. And
Barbashev played every game last year.
Oh, did he really?
So,
Okay.
fucking idiot, DJ. Go on.
Was he in the playoffs or something? I don't remember.
No, he played all 7 games.
All right. Well then.
Also, should note, speaking of all 7 games in the playoffs, Hurdle didn't do dick in that first round series, but he also came back with like a couple of weeks left in the regular season, so you didn't really get much of that classic Hurdle spice.
Right. This is a team that has a lot of question marks health wise, but if they are healthy and like pumping, they're obviously not going to be healthy like for 82 games all across the board. But if they're not decimated, this is a really good team.
And with a really
Their
good
back end
coach.
rocks,
I'll
too.
tell you what, like Bruce Cassidy didn't get fired in Boston for missing the playoffs.
Mm-hmm.
Bruce Cassidy got fired in Boston because some guys maybe on the Canucks right now weren't crazy about him. But he gets teams to the playoffs. He can get this team to the playoffs.
Oh, yeah.
Absolutely. I don't know what their betting odds are right now. Oh, they're actually pretty high. As Sean, you threw it up before. Yeah, they're 7th. That's too high, but
Well, I mean, it may not be because, like you mentioned, like they're not going to finish as the 7th best team in the NHL this season. But once the playoff picture is locked, you might be like, oh, Vegas is primed.
Yeah,
especially because you don't know what the Vegas Golden Knights are going to look like at the end of this season.
exactly, they can do the thing.
They always do the thing. They're the only team in the league that builds their roster in between the middle of the regular season. They don't build in the offseason. They build in the regular season.
It's such a fun, cool move for them. We'll see what they end up doing. Now let's have the challenge of trying to sort out the standings for the division. Although first, I think that I should tell you about Prize Picks, which is America's #1 daily fantasy sports app with over 5 million active members. Prize Picks is the easiest and most exciting way to play daily fantasy sports. Unlike other apps on Prize Picks, it's just you against the numbers. All you do is pick more or less on 2 to 6 player stat projections and watch the winnings roll in. Get in on any of the daily action with your friends and become part of the Prize Picks community. You can now win up to 100 times your money on Prize Picks with as little as 4 correct picks. You could turn $10 into $1,000. You know about this whole one Caleb Williams passing yard thing, Sean? I feel like you don't even know.
I do. Interestingly, I don't know what this is for, but they have one NHL thing on Prize Picks currently, and it is for Wednesday's game, Chicago versus Detroit, more or less than half a point for Seth Jones. It is currently the only thing that they have for,
Should we
for
DFS
preseason
Seth
hockey.
Jones points every game this year?
There's other stuff. That's just the only points thing they offer. But yes, I think that
I
would
thought
be
you
fun.
were saying like that. So like in football, they do like if Caleb Williams gets 1 passing yard, you win. Like if the player they used for that in the NHL was
Jones.
Here's
Seth
a freebie.
Jones.
It's Seth Jones.
The
He's
freebie
gonna get a
is
point.
if Seth Jones plays 10 minutes, you win. I was like, ooh, cash it. They're doing
I wouldn't put it beyond past Prize Picks. They do like giving out money.
Yes, and they do very fun ones. So download the Prize Picks app today and use code WhatChaos and get $50 instantly when you play $5. That's code WhatChaos on Prize Picks to get $50 instantly when you play $5. You don't even need to win to receive the $50 bonus. It's guaranteed. Prize Picks, run your game.
We're getting ready for the season that's coming up, but you can get ready for any season that includes sun with our friends at Shady Rays, because Shady Rays has you covered with premium polarized shades that won't break the bank. We're talking about an independent sunglasses company here that offers a world-class product rated 5 stars by over 300,000 people. Their shades have durable frames and crystal clear optics, making them the perfect choice for all outdoor adventures. They have hundreds of options to choose from, so you can find the perfect pair to match your style or even your team style. We're talking about the Pacific Division and how great their jerseys are and how much variety there is. Same with Shady Rays. Great fashion, great choices, great variety.
I know an accessorize. I know that a pair of Shady Rays that accessorizes well with Oilers stuff. Hate to see me coming because I have mixed and matched my Shady Rays with various Oilers items and received compliments for it.
I bet you have.
That's just the God's honest truth.
Which means that you probably have not utilized their incredible return policy.
You know I have.
Well, you exercised your right to take advantage of their
Lost and broken replacement.
replacement policy.
I'm sorry, you're right.
Because if you lose or break or just want to return within 30 days, Shady Rays has you covered with incredible, fast, and personal support. You're not talking to any robots or blah, blah, blah. Press this button to blah, blah, blah. No, you're getting incredible personal support from a real human. And if you don't love your shades, you can exchange them for a new pair or return them worry-free within 30 days. And if they ever go missing or take an unexpected hit, don't sweat it, because they have the most insane protection of all of eyewear. Every pair is backed by the lost or broken replacement policy. So, exclusively for our listeners, Shady Rays is giving out their best deal of the season. Head to shadyrays.com and use code AC35 for 35% off polarized sunglasses. Try for yourself the shades rated 5 stars by over 300,000 people. That's Shady Rays.
I'm looking at Shady Rays' website. They have a limited edition KFC sunglasses.
KFC?
KFC with a little Colonel Sanders in the corner, too.
What?
Wow.
Yeah.
Can we get those?
Yeah. You can get them at
using
Shady Rays.
code AC30, 35% off.
Is that right?
Yeah.
That's very interesting. We'll have to do that. Putting the Pacific in order is going to be a real chore, I think at least. And I'm annoyed that I don't think there's competition at number one, which annoys me.
Yep, number one, Oilers.
Well, number one has to be the Oilers. Mm-hmm. Like even if they fall short of what we expect during the regular season, they should still finish first in this division.
Even if they're the worst team in hockey for the first month of the season.
Yeah, right.
So if the Oilers repeated what they did last year, I think if they did that this year, I think they would finish first in the division because the other teams have gotten worse. Mm-hmm. So Oilers won by how many points?
I don't know.
The Canucks won by 5 points last season.
I mean, I don't know. That's a...
Can I get an 8+? I think that they win this going away.
Like, are you talking like you think they're in like President's Trophy realm?
I don't want them to be, but they might be. The roster is so much fucking better than everybody else's.
I don't feel like you can get, if they are what they have been, I guess you're asking a lot of Stuart Skinner for them to be a President's Trophy team.
And like I don't want them to be, probably for the same reason as you. Like, I love my Oilers season when it comes with ebbs and flows.
Exciting. Make it exciting. If
Peaks and valleys.
I was gonna say if they just win every game, that's not exciting. If the Oilers like win every game
incredible.
and have like a 2022-23 Bruins season,
what are we gonna not be excited
that's
about?
going to be the most fun season in NHL history.
I was gonna say, like, I don't think that their peaks and valleys are gonna be quite as high or low as they were last season, but like that could be wrong.
They could
their
be
peaks,
as high.
Yeah,
I was gonna say it's gonna be
as
kind of hard for them to get as low, but.
Okay, so Oilers won. Who we got number 2? That's where the draft really starts.
So I'm completely willing to go. I don't have when we've done the previous 3 here, I've had some like firm beliefs in where I think teams should go. This one is more fluid for me. I would be totally okay with the Canucks or the Vegas Golden Knights here.
Yeah,
I mean, like, even if you felt strongly about the Kings, I think they can be a good regular season team. I have a little bit more concerns about the goaltending there.
Can I get dark horsey, even though Vegas doesn't consider this dark horsey at all? They would consider it chalk. I feel like a lot of prognosticators are a little down on the Knights and think, hey, I mean, I remember thinking it a few days into free agency. I was like, this could be the year that it all crumbles or they have to reset in Vegas. I think the losses that they experienced and just that this roster is more different than it's been in a while will make them refocus. And I'm sure the coaching staff has put in a ton of work this offseason. Yeah, let's go Vegas 2.
All right, cool. You want to do Canucks 3 then?
Canucks 3.
All right, then we go, I think, Kings 4.
Kings 4 and a wild card?
Yeah.
Kings 4 and a wild card.
5'2" and an attitude.
You got it, yeah. Gen Z, Boston, and Mini. You remember those? people.
Oh my god.
Jesse-
I didn't hate that shit as much as everybody else seemed to hate it.
Me neither. Actually, my favorite content, I can't repeat it because it was gross, but like my favorite content on Twitter during that were the stands of those people and the defenders of those people.
No, my favorite was the guy.
They were like, leave them alone. I'm in love with them.
No, my favorite was the guy who was like cosplaying as the one man that worked in the office.
Oh, yeah.
That was fucking hilarious. All right, so five is where, like, I think 5 and beyond is where this is kind of, it could go anyway.
I would love for the Anaheim Ducks to enter the chat, but I think it's more likely the Seattle Kraken do.
Same. Yeah, let's put Kraken at 5. 6. Are we? The big question here is that, like, do we think that either the Ducks or Sharks are going to be good enough to leapfrog the Flames? Because I think that the Flames are completely uninteresting and not going to be good, but I don't think they're going to be like raw or terrible.
And that was my fear when we were discussing them, which is that they're just going to be in no man's land.
Like
they're
they're
going
the
to be
Minnesota
Wild.
team.
Yep.
Yeah.
What's that?
They're the Minnesota Wild.
They're the Minnesota Wild without the superstar.
Yeah.
Because Kirill Kaprizov at least is the superstar there. And now they got Brock Faber. Like, they're the Wild are a little bit more interesting, but like
They're the New York
Flames
Islanders.
are very uninteresting.
Except a little worse, I guess.
I kind of want to ride for my guys, knowing that we could be wrong. Could we ride for our guys and Frank? Put the Ducks 6th. Zegras back to whatever he's supposed to be.
Cool.
Mac T breakout year. Leo Carlson, hello. Cutter Gauthier, best player in the world.
All right, yeah, I'm
let's
cool
go
with that. Ducks, Flames, Sharks.
And then Sharks, no brainer to finish last, but we're not mad about it.
No.
Okay, that is your Pacific preview. We'll talk to you Monday when we resume daily episodes, Monday through Thursday. And if you're listening to this, make sure you subscribe to the YouTube. If you're watching on YouTube, make sure you get us where you can get all your podcasts and subscribe those various places.
And if you enjoyed the preview, please give a thumbs up on YouTube. It's not a live like spike, but we still appreciate those likes where we can get them. And leave a comment, please.
All right.
Like, let's have some fun here.
Fun stuff coming, including a cool little announcement thing that we'll reveal on Monday. Talk to you soon. Bye.
We all silly like the mayor.